Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans from a diehard Houston sports fan. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros fan podcaster. I'm an improviser, a writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and most importantly, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. Yeah, I lived in Houston long ago. I lived in Houston so long ago that it wasn't the be someone graffiti, it was a someone graffiti. Oof. Yeah, I said I was an improviser. That's the best joke I could improvise. I don't have my script with me. Oh, but yeah, folks, I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer and a joke writer here in Los Angeles, believe it or not. And now, well, of course, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you spend enough time in Los Angeles. You just start calling it the 10 instead of I-10, and you just have a podcast one day. You just wake up and you have a couple of them. Welcome to said podcast. Space Cadet Sports was started as a passion project because most media is infuriating. As a diehard long-term fan of the Houston Astros or your other Houston teams, so here we aren't doom and gloom casual Houston fans, or worse, the national media haters. We love our team and root them on, but want to try to discuss the ins and outs of our teams without too much homerism. The key word here is try. I'd like to welcome new listeners, and of course welcome returning listeners to what my brother calls the Paul Broadpod Ball Blog. Hey brother, shout out to my brothers, shout out to Arrested Development fans. Please check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience depending on your interpretation of my mumbling here. As always, we're recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-producer, the Roz to my Frasier. Carla the dog is here with me. If you've heard this podcast before, you know she's got the hot takes on the podcast. I've got the cold takes. I've got the sour cream takes, I guess. I cool you off before you get too fiery, before you get that acid reflux. I save you from heartburn on this podcast. Folks, on this podcast, I'm saving you from heartburn, and also we are talking about the Astros getting swept, unfortunately, by the Cleveland Guardians, and we're going to, hopefully not dwell on that too much and move forward to talk about the Texas Rags playing your Houston Astros. That's right, the return of the Silver Boot Series before the All-Star break. We're going to look at the last 3 games before the All-Star break here. Before we completely get into the podcast, of course, I would be remiss. That's our word of the day. You could look that up, kids. I would be remiss if I didn't say g'day, mates, to our Australian listeners out there. A long-running joke in this podcast at this point. I feel like the intro was already long enough. Let's go ahead and get to sports, folks. Let's talk about your Houston Astros. Let's just bite the bullet. Unfortunately, what we are talking about, on the heels of your Astros sweeping the Dodgers, the yin and the yang, the other side of the coin, the Astros got swept by the Cleveland Guardians in a 3-game series that was just, frankly, no fun to watch. It just wasn't great. I almost said highlights, but like the lowlights of the games, obviously, Hunter Brown and Josh Hader. I almost forgot his name for a second. I almost blacked out because I was so angry about it. But Hunter Brown and Josh Hader had a really rough game, giving up 10 runs, a grand slam, finishing that game on Tuesday. We also, before the game on Wednesday, a couple days ago, center fielder Jake Myers before the game even started, just jogging out there. Had just looked like he was in a lot of pain, and immediately the Astros had to pivot their lineup. The lineup cards had already been submitted, so right before the game, right as you're tuning into to the game on Wednesday, instead of watching, some fun pregame banter, you're wondering what the heck is happening to Jake Meyers. So let's kind of talk about that. Obviously, the sweep isn't very fun. The Astros, honestly, they had some good offense in the first 2 games of the series. They still were leaving a lot of men on base, a lot of runners in scoring position in those games getting left on base. In Wednesday's game, the lineup was maybe not the best constructed, seeing that Zach Short had to bat second in that lineup immediately. Not that he's that bad of a hitter, but maybe that's not exactly the lineup construction that manager Joe Espada necessarily wanted. That game, the pitcher from the Guardians, he really just dealt in that game too. That was a tough one with the Astros only mustering 2 runs in that game. So obviously, there wasn't a lot of consistency from the Astros in these games, and that led to their downfall. But at the same time, if you look at the series, if you would take a sweep, I would take a sweep of the Dodgers any day for getting swept by the Guardians. Obviously, you want to win all those games. That isn't how life works or the deal Joe Espada made with anybody. But I'm just saying, yeah, it stinks. But the fact that we just swept the Dodgers in LA, I can take it a little bit better, but we're still kind of looking at this team. We're looking at the injuries, and we'll talk about Jake Meyers here in the A block. I think that's what a lot of people are talking about right now. That's what a lot of people are upset about. Obviously, I think Jake Meyers being injured, so many injuries that the Astros have sustained this season is very frustrating. I don't want to see anybody injured. I don't think it's fun to see anybody injured. But I think this whole thing that the Astros medical staff needs to be completely fired immediately because these people are getting hurt. I get the anger. I do think that there needs to be some kind of review, for how people come back from injuries. I think that should always be under review. I think, frankly, that if you're not always, looking on how you can improve in that area in the medical field, I think that that's a little foolish. I think these are people that should be at the top of their game. I don't think Jim Crane wants a lot of people injured and he's being cheap with the medical staff or anything like that. What I really think there is this seems to be a larger problem as well. So it's not me saying that I'm not frustrated by this. I just think that some of this is a little misguided frustration, perhaps, from you fans out there. So let me get on my soapbox and tell you guys to calmate. I think you're getting a little worked up. I think it's easy to find a scapegoat and to villainize just one thing when maybe this is a nuanced problem. I'm not saying that this is not a problem and we should just be fine with this, but I'm saying maybe it's a little bit more nuanced than we think. When you look at the injuries that are happening just across the board in baseball, we're not the only team that is dealing with a lot of injuries. We just played the Dodgers. I'm out here in Los Angeles. They have sustained a lot of injuries. They are a team kind of like the Astros too. The last couple of seasons, they have really seen a lot of starting pitching get injured, a lot of pitchers injured, I should say, as well. I think it is a league-wide problem as well as an Astros problem right now. When I think truly the Astros and the Astros medical staff, their biggest sin, in my opinion, is that they are terrible at PR. This team desperately needs a PR person for their medical staff and how to deal with the media. I think when they had that press release about Yordan Alvarez's thumb imaging, that was very clear. That was very well worded, and it gave us some clarity as to what was happening with the Yordan Alvarez treatment. I think that's really what fans want. But at the end of the day, I think more than anything, that's what Chandler Rome wants. That's right, I'm back on talking about Chandler Rome. Just when I said Chandler Rome isn't a bad guy, I'm kidding. Chandler Rome is not a bad guy. Chandler Rome is a journalist. Chandler Rome has a podcast. I'm a podcaster. I can't be hating on other podcasters for creating podcasts and talking points and segments and stuff like that, right? But I think more than anything, when you're Chandler Rome, you kind of need clicks. You need to engage the fan base. You have to meet the fan base where they're at and talk about what their frustrations are. And right now their frustrations are injuries, right? So that doesn't mean Chandler Rome's a villain or anything to be talking about injuries. I just think the way that he goes about it, it kind of creates a whole circus, because he is rightfully a little frustrated because he's trying to write articles about these injuries. But at the end of the day, I think, what it is like, it's better for gamblers. Fans want this information so they can place better bets. I think it helps Chandler Rome get more clicks. And at the end of the day, I think there should be clear press releases about what's happening with these players. But I don't think that's a fault of the medical team's medical expertise, right? I think that is a fault of the Astros not knowing how to do press very well for some reason. It's very frustrating to me that they they need better PR people, just frankly, especially around the medical problems that the Astros have been having with their players lately. Chandler Rome says stuff like he hasn't trusted the Astros since the Kyle Tucker fiasco. Here's the thing, sometimes injuries get better and sometimes injuries get worse. You can't, and I think for us as a fan base, we kind of want it to be like a video game. If a player is injured and they are injured and the doctor says they're injured for 2 weeks, then in 2 weeks they can start rehabbing, right? But in real life, it's a lot more complicated than that. If you've ever sustained an injury, if you've ever had a sports injury, you probably know that the path back to recovery wasn't exactly linear. It's hard to expect the forecast of how long the injury is going to take to heal at the very beginning of diagnosis. It's hard for that to be right all of the time. That's going to be tough. You hope that you have enough doctors and professionals that as things develop along the way, you can treat those things and get better quicker. But I think it's kind of this really easy scapegoat to be like, they don't know what they're doing. Sometimes things develop and you have to treat them as they go. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying I am in there and I know that the medical staff is operating at 100%. I'm just saying, let's take a step back and actually think about this logically. It's the same thing with Jeremy Pena. They're over there saying, he just got hit in the ribs and we didn't know it was that bad until later. And I think the initial imaging in that situation did not show, they didn't see anything in the initial imaging. Obviously, Jeremy Pena, wanted to play, and I think this is another part of it too, is these are baseball players that want to play ball. They don't want to be injured. I think we need to make sure we're not rushing them back as an organization, nor are the players rushing themselves back. I think that's important too. But I'm just saying that these guys kind of want to play, and sometimes initially adrenaline or swelling, you just don't know something is as bad as it is. I mentioned I've broken my ribs before. I want to be clear here on the podcast, that wasn't a baseball injury. This injury, before we take a break, this injury, it actually happened playing flag football in the park on Thanksgiving here in Los Angeles. Somebody got really excited, and I don't know why they did this, but I still to this day don't completely know what happened. But this gentleman in our flag football game tackled me, and I fell onto a grate in the on the park, and falling on that grate, I sustained two broken ribs, and but at the time, I really didn't know. So I sat down for a while. I didn't play. And then I kind of, like, after a little bit, I went back in the game, and then I realized I really couldn't run very well, so I sat back down. I had full-on Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't go to the doctors for 2 days because I didn't know what was happening to me. And when I went to the doctor was like, "You have broken ribs. What's wrong with you?" So that story just saying, sometimes if you just have a lot of adrenaline, if you're just dying to stay in the routine of your life, sometimes you don't know how bad an injury is. And I'm not saying Jeremy Pena was hiding this injury. I'm just saying they didn't know how bad it was at first because it needed some time for them to be able to see the swelling go down in the imaging. This is how medical treatment goes. Sometimes it isn't linear, but at the same time, it really looks like the Astros, for all the press problems they're having, they really need to have a look at their medical staff, and they need to be clear with the fans so they can get this monkey off their back and have this story not be a story anymore. So Astros, if you're listening, and I know you are, let's figure out that press PR around all that medical problems. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about some more Astros baseball. We'll talk about the Silver Boot Series coming up and a little bit about your Houston Rockets coming right up.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back. Welcome back, folks. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your host here on the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. We're here to talk more about your Houston Astros. I just got off my soapbox to talk about how I think the medical problem is more of a PR problem than just a straightforward medical problem. I do think there is a league-wide injury issue happening right now. Let me know what you think. Obviously, I'm open to other people's takes. I do want to know what other people are thinking out there. I think it's more nuanced, I guess, is where I'm really landing on this. That, of course, a sour cream take is what you get here from me here, something a little more reasonable. I don't fan the flames for clicks, honestly, because it wouldn't help me. Let's be honest. I'd have to be. I don't want to turn into a shock jock out here, folks. I love the Astros. I love the team here in Houston. I want to talk about the good stuff. I am a person that I want my fandom to be happy, or at least as happy and healthy as I can get it. So I try not to get into the anger and the hate too much. I try to take a deep breath and get a bigger view of it. With that being said, let me know if you're angry at me for my takes. Well, let's move on and talk about the Silver Boot Series starting this evening against the South Oklahoma Rags. That's right, the Arlington Rangers are coming to Dyken Park tonight in the game. We have Lance McCullers Jr. facing off against Jack Leiter, young pitcher, 25-year-old pitcher on the Rangers there. Obviously, this guy is, kind of we've seen pitchers like him in the Astros organization, somebody like a young Hunter Brown, somebody that's coming up. We have a stable full of horses there, but a pitcher at the back end of the rotation that could be the future. So Jack Leiter, he might not have numbers that are completely lighting it up there, but he could easily be the future of this organization. So it will be a good pitching matchup there tonight, and tomorrow we have Jacob deGrom, or I should say we have to face off against, or the Astros should. I try to stay away from the we, folks. I know I do it a lot. But Jacob deGrom is pitching for the Rags, and Framber La Grasa is pitching for the Astros. Fromber is 10-4 on the season with a 2.90 ERA and 115 strikeouts on the season. And Jacob deGrom is 9-2 with a 2.29 ERA and 105 strikeouts. Folks, this is going to be a nationally televised game on Fox. And it is going to be a big one. Our games on Fox haven't been going too well lately, but this is going to be a must-watch game. I definitely am going to be there tomorrow with popcorn. Carla and I always watch the games. That's what I say. This is why I don't pretend to be a journalist or a scout or anything like that, or even a statistician. I try not to be anybody I'm not. I am a comedian. I am a fan. I'm a super fan that watches all the games. That's the thing. It's like, I promise you, I will watch all the games. And speaking of watching all the games, I still am shocked from that Ryan Gusto comebacker that hit him in the head and it just kind of bounced right off of him, and he obviously concussion protocol. I'm still shocked that it didn't take a little bit longer to check on him, but hey. One of the things, like I'm saying, league-wide, the league needs to get better at protecting its players. That's all. I was like, wait, I meant to mention that earlier. Anyway, back off the soapbox, back on to talking about the Texas Rangers Houston Astros series here on Fox. The second game, I should say, we're definitely looking for, not fireworks, but we're looking for a pitcher's duel in that game is what I'm saying. And the same thing for the Sunday brunch game. Hunter Brown, Diesel is going up for the Houston Astros, arguably the ace of the staff, depending on if you're a La Grasa or Diesel guy. Personally, I like them both. I think why not have a 1A, 1B? They're both amazing. Hunter Brown will be playing against Eovaldi. Nate Eovaldi, has had a great season. He's 6-3 with a 1.62 ERA and 86 strikeouts. Meanwhile, Hunter Brown has a 9-3 record with a 2.21 ERA and 129 strikeouts. So these pitching matchups, these pitching duels, kind of the first game, is kind of like a prelude to the big pitching matchups coming on the weekend. Obviously, Hunter Brown pitching in that game means that he is probably not going to be pitching in the All-Star. Well, I think it does mean that. I'm sorry to say. It means he will not be pitching in the All-Star game. But it's good to see the Astros really competing. These games in the division are going to be big this season. Right now, the Astros are, I believe, 7 games up. Let me double check the standings here. They are 7 games up in the AL West. They are 55-38, while the Mariners are 48-45 in second place, and the Rags are 46-48, sub 500 there, 9.5 games back. But still, with the Astros being on a 3-game losing streak, with these AL West division games really mattering, I think it's great that they're pitching their best pitchers here before the All-Star break. I think this is just showing how competitive this team is and how much they're really taking seriously these individual games. I think you have to take the long view here in baseball and in management. I don't have Joe Espada. Knows that. I don't have to mansplain that to him. But, I do think it's good to see that they're really competing in this last series before the All-Star break and against a division rival. A big story to watch here in the upcoming Silver Boot continued series, folks, is the Astros have called up top prospect Brice Matthews. Brice Matthews is an infielder. He is from the University of Nebraska and a Houston area native. So it's good to see a hometown kid get on the squad. I believe Shea Whitcomb was sent back to the minors, and Christian Walker's back from paternity leave. I think, sadly, Shea Whitcomb's couple of stints in the majors just really hadn't really cracked some playing time. I think that was just due to them not trusting his defensive abilities, sadly. But he did get that home run. We'll see if we'll see more Shea or if Brice is here with the team to stay. Brice is a big prospect here. And I think, the last couple of seasons, the Astros have been a team that was slow to bring players to the majors. They really let players develop. But since GM Dana Brown has been with the team, they have really brought a lot of his high draft picks quickly through the minors. And these aren't all draft picks. Some players are still going to be developmental players. Not every single Astros prospect is going to be rushed by GM Dana Brown, but if it is a player that has had substantial college playing time, it looks like that's Dana Brown's kind of MO. You find somebody with a substantial amount of college playing time, you get them to the minors and just kind of speed them through that process to get them ready for either a trade or for some major league playing time to see how they do. So we'll see how Brice does here. He is mostly going to be an infielder, I believe. I think he has, if I remember correctly, he has had some time in the outfield as well, but he's been primarily a second baseman with the Sugarland Space Cowboys this season. With Jeremy Pena still being injured, with Shea Whitcomb going down, with just the way the roster shakes out right now, it looks like Brice Matthews is up here to probably play some second base, maybe shortstop. I don't know. Truly, I don't know if the team trusts him at shortstop. You look at you looked at the fact that Shea Whitcomb got very little infield playing time. You look at the fact that they got veterans like Brendan Rodgers and Luis Guillorme, on the squad. They prioritize great infield defense. I do not know Brice Matthews' defensive tape well enough to know if he might cut the mustard, for the Houston Astros organization right now. It seems like they're pretty, they're pretty, what am I trying to say here? I don't have the words. They're really strict with who kind of cracks that depth chart for the first team there with the Houston Astros. You have to be really good. Even Zach Shortstop himself, has made some really big plays. You got to be able to flash some leather to play those positions, folks. So we'll see where exactly they use Brice Matthews, but most of us are thinking second base. And we'll see. He obviously is brought up because of the space on the roster that was created by Jake Myers. I'm not really sure how the extent of Jake Myers' injury. It has not been reported on, but it did not look good. The fact that he was doing baseball activity, the fact that Jake Myers thought he was good, the fact that the trainers thought he was good, and that he just couldn't play the game and had to go basically get carted off, and that's not a really good sign. So, we don't know going forward, Jake Myers is going to be able to return, or we don't have a timeline for that. It definitely didn't look good, so we're kind of pessimistic here. But if Jake Myers is out for a significant amount of time, that does create another outfield spot opening up, and maybe Jose Altuve goes back to left and DHs, and Brice Matthews spends a little bit of time in the infield taking some second base reps until Pena is back, and Short and Matthews maybe do some second base we still have Dubon here, but if Myers is out for a significant amount of time, I'd assume Mauricio Dubon would be number one in center field. You let me know what you think, if you think kind of how the center field or the outfield depth chart shakes out now that Jake might be gone for a significant amount of time. Let me know if you think I'm right about that. I obviously have no information. I have no insiders here. So, I'm just going off of what I saw and, how I feel about the situation. But folks, before we wrap up this podcast, let's talk a little bit about the Houston Rockets real quick. With Kevin Durant on the team, wearing number 7. Kevin Durant is number 7 instead of 35 for the Houston Rockets, just in case you are getting those jerseys already or you need to cancel a custom jersey order, folks. Kevin Durant is with the team. We are getting really excited about the Houston Rockets in Houston, and a lot of people are saying, in the national media, championship or bust. And I just wanted to gauge your opinion. For me, as a Rockets fan, it just seemed like a couple of seasons ago, we were just happy to get a winning record. So for me, it isn't exactly championship or bust. I think for me, my goal is I want this team, the Kevin Durant team, to go to the finals. That's what I would like to see. So within the next couple of years, maybe in the next 3 years, depending on Kevin Durant's tenure with the Rockets, but I don't know if it's championship or bust for me. Am I being too easy on the team? I think for me, I'm looking more at long-term growth. I think this is a stepping stone to get us to the next level, and as long as we get to that tier and can sustain that, I would be happy. But I don't know. What do you think, folks? Let me know what you think. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I know my voice is kind of whack right now. I appreciate you dealing with it. I want to thank you for listening. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, bop it, kick it, skip it, smash all of those buttons for me, folks. We're a small podcast and we only go as far as our listenership takes us. We are supported by listeners like you, so please share with a Houston fan or Australian in your life and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. Check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you can be a free subscriber and get all the podcasts and so many articles emailed directly to you for free. We try to get everything out there for free, folks. Very little behind a paywall, and that's just, so you can help us pay the bills around here if you want to support. Please let us know what you think about, the Rockets championship. Are you championship or bust? What do you think? Who's going to be what's the center field depth chart going to look like for the Astros? Let me know your takes. Reach out on social media at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram, at spacecadetsports.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or call in on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/SpaceCadetSports. Folks, I want to thank you for listening. There's a lot of devastation happening right now in the world. I just want to ask you to kind of look inside your heart to help wherever you can. Whether it is in Texas, where you can help to the flood relief, whether you can go there yourself or you could donate time or money, or whether you can donate to Los Angeles right now, where we are dealing we are dealing with a lot of people being kidnapped. We are dealing with people being taken, and we could use some help for our communities. Please consider that and think of a way to spend your time or money to help these communities that need your help so desperately right now. Folks, thank you so much for listening to my soapbox. If you want to find more of my weird jokes and soapboxy takes, you can find me on social media making jokes, meme, art, podcasts, and so much more at Paul Salazar Jr. PaulSalazarJR.net, because I'm nothing but net, where you can find my other Substack. You can find merch. You can find all kinds of stuff if you're nasty. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos, vamos, Houston.